The first thing people remembered about that day was not the cold. It was the silence. A hard winter wind swept through Red Hollow, Wyoming territory in the winter of 1883. Snow drifted across Main Street in thin sheets, sliding over frozen mud and empty wagon tracks. Most folks stayed inside, huddled near stoves and fireplaces, trying to forget how long the winter had already been. Then the doors of the Broken Spur Saloon burst open. Josiah Turner stumbled out into the street, half dragging, half shoving his daughter behind him. "She's deaf!" he roared, his voice cracking through the air like a rifle shot. "Deaf as a rock! Take her!" Heads turned, curtains shifted, doors creaked open. Clutched in his fist was the wrist of his only child, 19-year-old Eliza Turner. Eliza did not fight him, and she had learned long ago that fighting only made things worse. Her dark brown hair hung loose over her shoulders, tangled by wind. Snow clung to the thin cotton dress she wore, far too light for winter. Her coat had been sold weeks ago for whiskey money. Her boots were cracked and soaked through. Her eyes stayed down. She could feel the stares before she even saw them. "She don't hear nothing," Josiah shouted again, swaying on his feet. "Can't talk right neither. Useless girl. Been feeding her for 19 years and for what?" A few men from the saloon stepped outside, laughing nervously. Others watched with folded arms. Eliza's fingers twitched at her sides. She heard him. Not clearly. The fever she had as a child had damaged her hearing. Sounds came to her like they were underwater, muffled, distant. But they were there, and she had never told him. When she was little, she tried once. He had slapped her so hard, her ear rang for days. After that, she let him believe she was fully deaf. It was safer that way. "I'm done," Josiah shouted. "I'm giving her away. Anybody wants her, take her. I'll even throw in $5. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the crowd. Eliza kept her face blank. Inside, her heart beat so hard, she felt it in her throat. She had always known this day might come. Since her mother died giving birth to her, Josiah had carried his grief like a wound that never healed. And instead of blaming fate, he blamed the baby who survived. Her. "Come on," he yelled. "She cooks. She cleans. Don't talk back. What more you need?" No one stepped forward. Even in a rough frontier town, there were lines men pretended they would not cross. Sheriff Tom Callahan stood outside his office watching. His jaw was tight, but he did not move. Family business. That was what people always said. Josiah shoved her forward again. Eliza stumbled, catching herself before she fell into the snow. Then the wind shifted, and so did the crowd. Hoofbeats, slow, heavy, steady. Every head turned toward the far end of the street. A tall figure rode in from the white haze. He did not hurry. He did not look left or right. He simply rode. The horse was broad and black, steam rising from its nostrils. The rider sat straight, wrapped in a thick buffalo hide coat that fell nearly to the saddle. Long black hair streaked with gray hung loose down his back. He was Apache. That much was clear, and he was enormous. At nearly 7 feet tall when he finally swung down from his horse. The street grew quiet in a way that had nothing to do with snow. Josiah stopped shouting. The stranger walked forward slowly, boots crunching in the frozen street. His face was scarred, not ugly, but marked by a life that had not been gentle. His eyes were dark and calm, moving over the scene without hurry. He looked at Josiah, then at Eliza. He did not look at her with pity. He studied her. Eliza felt it, felt something different in that gaze. Not disgust, not mockery, recognition. Josiah found his voice first. "This ain't your concern," he muttered. The tall man stopped 10 feet away. "You offered her," he said quietly. His voice was deep, steady, controlled. "I'm anyone." A murmur moved through the crowd. "That's Isaac Redhawk," someone whispered. "Lives up past Eagle Ridge. Scouted for the army once. Dangerous man." Isaac Redhawk's eyes returned to Eliza. He stepped closer. She could hear her own breathing, could hear the faint crackle of wind. He leaned down slightly so his voice would not carry beyond her. "I know you can hear." The words struck her like lightning. Her head snapped up. For the first time in years, she looked straight into someone's eyes. He knew. Her hands trembled. No one had ever guessed. Not once. "How?" she started, her voice rough from disuse. Gasps erupted around them. "She talks?" someone whispered. Josiah stared at her as if she had turned into a ghost. Isaac did not look surprised. "You turn your head when wagons pass," he said softly. "You flinch before a shout lands. Small things." Eliza felt heat rush to her face. 19 years of hiding. Gone in a moment. Josiah staggered backward. "You lied!" he barked. "You little—" Isaac stepped between them. The movement was slow, deliberate, protective. "She did what she had to," Isaac said. His tone was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. Josiah swallowed. "She's mine," he insisted weakly. "You put a price on her," Isaac replied. He reached inside his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. Silver coins spilled into his palm. More than $5. Josiah's eyes locked onto the money. The crowd leaned forward. "I'll take her," Isaac said. Not as a buyer, as a decision. Eliza's heart pounded. Was she trading one prison for another? She had heard the stories whispered about Apache men. Cruel, wild, savage. But the hand Isaac extended toward her was open, palm up. Not grabbing, not demanding, offering. "You choose," he said quietly. The words barely reached her ears, but she felt them. Choose. No one had ever given her that before. Not her father. Not the town. No one. She looked around, at the men who laughed, at the women who whispered, at the sheriff who had done nothing. Then she looked back at Isaac Redhawk. His eyes did not pressure her. They waited. Her fingers curled slowly. Then she placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, something shifted. He did not grip tightly. He held steady. Josiah lunged for the silver. "Fine," he snapped. "Take her. Good riddance." The coins disappeared into his shaking hands. Eliza did not look at him again. Isaac removed his heavy buffalo coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, and it swallowed her small frame completely. Warm. Safe. "We go now," he said. The crowd parted as they walked. Whispers followed like smoke. But for the first time in her life, Eliza did not feel small. She felt something else, uncertain, afraid, but also alive. Isaac lifted her onto the horse and mounted behind her. His arm came around her waist to steady her. "Hold on," he murmured. The horse turned toward the mountain trail. Behind them, Josiah shouted something. She did not turn back. Snow began to fall harder, erasing their tracks almost as soon as they formed. As Red Hollow disappeared behind the white curtain, Eliza leaned slightly against the solid warmth at her back. She did not know what waited for her on Eagle Ridge. She did not know if she had just escaped hell or ridden into a new one. But she knew one thing. For the first time in 19 years, someone had seen her. and that changed everything. The climb to Eagle Ridge took hours. Snow fell thicker the higher they rode. The trees grew tall and close together, their branches heavy with white. The world below disappeared behind them, swallowed by winter and distance. Eliza held on to the saddle horn at first, stiff and uncertain. After a while, her fingers relaxed. Isaac rode steady and sure, guiding the horse through narrow trails as if he had walked them 1,000 times. His arm around her waist was firm but careful, not possessive, protective. The wind up there did not howl like it did in town. It whispered. When they finally stopped, dusk had fallen. A small cabin stood tucked against a wall of rock, almost hidden among the pine trees. Smoke drifted from the chimney in a thin gray line. Eliza stared. She had expected something rough, something wild. Instead, the cabin looked solid, strong, built to last. Isaac helped her down gently. Her legs trembled from the long ride. Inside, warmth wrapped around her instantly. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and pine sap. A stone fireplace glowed against one wall. Shelves lined the room, filled with jars, tools, and books. Books. Dozens of them. Eliza stepped forward slowly, her fingers brushing the worn leather spines. She had loved books once, before her father burned the only one she owned, saying she had no need for stories. "These are yours?" she asked quietly. Isaac nodded. "I read when the snow is deep." She looked at him with surprise. "You read?" A faint smile touched his scarred face. "I listen when others speak," he said. "Then I learn." He moved around the cabin, adding wood to the fire, setting a kettle over the flames. Every motion was calm and practiced. "You are safe here," he said, without looking at her. The word safe made her chest ache. No one had ever promised her that before. She stood awkwardly near the door, unsure what to do with herself. Isaac noticed. "There is food," he said, "and a bed. You take it. I sleep by the fire. You don't have to." "I do," he said gently. "You are my guest. Guest. Not property. Not burden. Guest." She swallowed the lump in her throat. They ate in quiet. Dried meat, bread, hot tea that warmed her hands and throat. Eliza studied him when he wasn't looking. The scars on his hands, the steady way he moved, the quiet in him. He did not ask her questions she wasn't ready to answer. After they finished eating, he reached into a wooden chest and pulled out folded clothing. "My sister's," he said. "She died 3 winters ago." He handed her a wool dress and a thick shawl. "She was small like you." Eliza's fingers traced the fabric. It was clean, carefully kept. "Thank you," she whispered. He turned his back so she could change. That small act of respect nearly broke her. But when she stepped out wearing the dress, it fit well enough. The shawl wrapped around her shoulders felt like armor. Isaac looked at her and gave a short nod. Good. That night, she lay in a real bed for the first time in years. The mattress was stuffed with pine needles that smelled fresh and sharp. She listened to the crackle of the fire and the steady sound of Isaac carving wood near the hearth. She slept without fear. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee. Isaac was already outside chopping wood. Snow glittered in the early light. The mountains stretched wide and endless. For days, they fell into a quiet rhythm. He taught her how to set rabbit snares, how to read tracks in snow, how to listen to the wind and know when a storm was coming. He showed her sign language used between tribes and scouts. What his large hands moved with surprising grace. "You speak well," he told her once, with hands and voice. She felt pride bloom in her chest. No one had ever said she spoke well. Evenings were her favorite. They would sit by the fire, books open between them. He would read aloud slowly, clearly, and she would follow along, catching what she could hear and filling the rest with sight. Sometimes she would read to him. Her voice was soft and unsure at first, but it grew stronger. One night, while snow fell heavy outside, she looked at him across the fire. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He did not answer right away. Finally, he said, "I know what it is to be unwanted, to be called less than a man." His dark eyes met hers. "I saw you, that day in town. You were not broken, just trapped." Her throat tightened. No one had ever understood it so clearly. Weeks passed. Peace settled around them like snow on pine branches. Until the day they returned to town. Supplies were low. They needed flour and nails for roof repairs. Winter was not done yet. Eliza's stomach tightened as they rode back into Red Hollow. People noticed. They always noticed. This time, the whispers were louder. Men stared openly. Women looked at her with sharp curiosity. Inside the general store, Mrs. Jenkins froze when she saw them. "Well," she said stiffly. "Back already?" Eliza felt the tension in the room. Snatches of words reached her damaged hearing. Living together. Up there alone. Shame. Isaac ignored them, gathering supplies calmly. Then Silas Boone stepped inside. Young, well-dressed, too confident for his own good. He looked Eliza up and down. "But you don't have to stay with him," he said loudly. "The church will take you in. Proper place for a girl like you." Eliza's hands clenched. "I choose where I stay," she said clearly. The room went silent. "You can talk?" Silas asked, stunned. "I always could." Silas's face darkened. "You don't know what kind of man he is." She turned to look at Isaac. "I do." More whispers. Silas leaned closer. "People are saying things," he said quietly, but sharp. "Ugly things. A white girl alone with an Apache. You think that won't follow you?" Eliza felt heat rise in her chest. "I'd rather face whispers," she said, "than fists." The words hit harder than she expected. A few townspeople looked away. Silas flushed. "This isn't over," he muttered. Sheriff Callahan stepped in then, breaking the tension. "That's enough, Boone." But Eliza could feel it. The air had changed. This was not just gossip anymore. It was pride wounded. And wounded pride turned dangerous. As they rode back up the mountain that afternoon, Eliza leaned back slightly against Isaac. "They will come," she said quietly. "Yes," he agreed. "Are you afraid?" He was silent for a moment. "I fear for you," he said honestly. "Not for myself." She reached back and touched his hand. "I am not the girl they dragged into the street," she said. "No," he replied. "You are not." Behind them, Red Hollow grew smaller. But the storm was not finished. And this time, it would not come in whispers. The storm came 3 nights later, not from the sky, from the valley. Eliza woke to the sound of horses. Many horses, even through her damaged hearing, and she felt the vibration echo in the ground. The rhythm was too heavy to ignore. Isaac was already awake. He stood near the window, rifle in hand, his face calm but alert. "They are here," he said quietly. Torches flickered between the trees below. At least 15 riders. The flames looked like angry stars moving through the dark forest. Eliza's heart pounded. Silas Boone rode at the front. Even from a distance, She could see his stiff posture. His pride had not healed. It had hardened. "They think they are righteous," Isaac said. "They think they are saving me," Eliza replied. A voice shouted from below, "Send the girl out, Red Hawk. We're taking her home." Eliza felt heat rise in her chest. Home. They had watched her suffer for years and called it home. Isaac stepped onto the porch, tall and steady against the firelight. "No one here needs saving," he said. "You corrupted her," Silas shouted back. "You twisted her mind. She don't know what she's doing." Eliza moved past Isaac before he could stop her. She stepped onto the porch beside him. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but she stood tall. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she called. The riders shifted uneasily. They remembered the quiet girl who stared at the ground. This was not her. "You don't belong up there," Silas yelled. "You belong with your own kind." "My own kind?" Eliza's voice cut through the night. "The kind that stood and laughed while my father sold me." Murmurs moved through the group. Silas flushed. "That was different." "No," she interrupted. "It was the truth. You never cared about me. You care about your pride." Isaac stood silent beside her, letting her speak. "You don't like that I chose him," she continued. "You don't like that I was not weak. You don't like that I can think for myself." Silas raised his rifle slightly. "You think we won't drag you down?" Isaac's voice dropped, cold and steady. "You try." The threat was not loud. It did not need to be. The men knew his reputation. They saw the way he held himself. Ready, deadly. But Eliza lifted her hand before violence could rise. "You burn this cabin," she said clearly, "but you prove exactly what I've been saying." The men hesitated. "You call him savage," she continued. "But who rides in the night with fire?" Silence. Snow began to fall lightly around them. One of the older men shifted in his saddle. "Maybe we should go," he muttered. Silas glared at him. "She's confused," he insisted. "She don't understand." "I understand, love," Eliza said. The word hung in the cold air. She reached for Isaac's hand. "I understand respect. I understand choice. Those are things none of you ever offered me." For a long moment, no one moved. The fire from their torches flickered uncertainly. Finally, one rider turned his horse around. Then another. Silas looked around, furious. "You're all cowards," he spat. But the courage of a mob fades quickly when doubt sets in. Within minutes, the torches began to disappear into the trees. Silas was the last to leave. "This ain't over," he shouted, but his voice sounded smaller now. When the forest grew quiet again, Eliza's knees nearly gave out. Isaac caught her easily. "You were brave," he said softly. "I was angry," she admitted. "Anger can be brave." They stood together in the falling snow, watching the darkness swallow the valley. "I don't want to run anymore," she said. "You don't have to." Spring came slowly to Eagle Ridge. Snow melted into clear streams. The air softened. The trees grew green again. Word spread through nearby towns about the night the mob had failed. Some mocked it. Some admired it. But fewer people came to interfere. Time, like weather, moved forward. One evening, as the sun dipped gold behind the mountains, Isaac carved something new. Eliza watched him from the doorway. When he finished, he handed it to her. It was a small wooden bird. Its wings were spread wide, not broken, not caged. Flying. "For you," he said. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I only opened the door." She looked out across the valley. Red Hollow was still there. The same buildings, the same people. but she was not the same girl. "I used to think I was broken," she said quietly. "You were never broken," Isaac replied. "Only silenced." She turned to him. "And you?" He smiled slightly. "I was waiting." She stepped closer. "I'm not waiting anymore." Their kiss was slow and gentle, not rushed, not desperate. A choice. Later that summer, they rode into town again, but not in fear, not in anger, just passing through. Some people still stared, some still whispered, but others nodded respectfully. Mrs. Jenkins even offered Eliza fresh bread without charge. Change did not come fast in places like Red Hollow, but it came, piece by piece, choice by choice. Years later, when children's laughter echoed around the cabin on Eagle Ridge, no one remembered the girl who had been dragged into the street. They remembered the woman who stood on a porch and faced a mob. They remembered the Apache giant who spoke softly and carried himself like a mountain. And when people asked Eliza how she found the courage to leave everything behind, she would smile and say, "I didn't leave everything behind. I left what was breaking me." Then she would look at Isaac, and he would nod once, but the same way he had that first night. Because in the end, the loudest truth was not spoken in shouts or threats. It was whispered. "I know you can hear." And she had, all along.